Awesome. All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you living? What do you do?
Uh-huh. I'm calling to you today from Deer Isle, Maine. And I've done a lot of different things, but why I was reaching out to you is the past couple of years I've been working on a lobster boat, and it's been a like really potent teacher, I guess I would say, as far as learning a whole new array of skills.
What'd you do before that?
Many different things, some construction. I'd most recently been roasting coffee. I've worked in a sail loft. I've waited tables. I've been the person working lots and lots of jobs, sort of trying to support creative practice and navigate that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, very much. And I think reflecting back on that, I am interested in that kind of learning of new skills and sort of like interested in seeing the body through that way, especially in these kinds of trades. And yeah, the thing that interested me a lot, I really didn't want to do it. I didn't want to work on a lobster boat, mainly because people were like, oh, it'll really like destroy you. It's really bad for you. It's really, really brutal on the body, all these things about it. And so
the people saying this were like people who were doing it for a while?
A range. Yeah, people who are fishing, and then also people who are just in the area. Like this Deer Isle, Stonington is the most the most lobster licenses in Maine. It's the place. I mean, there's a lot of the place, right? But
right.
it's a big force, I guess. So yeah, a whole range of people who had worked, a whole range. And what I found, though, in the process of sort of getting brought into that fishing world a little bit was, despite those kind of stereotypes, there's a whole lot of interesting, like, physical learners that are managing their own selves. And I don't know, just yeah, it's been a really dense place of learning in that way. And just seeing that the person who I was learning from, one of the first things he said was like, I know this sounds weird, but you're gonna become a hand fetishist. And being like, oh, okay, I don't know what you mean, but getting the sense of that, of like, it's by far the most like dexterous manual job I've ever had, where like carpentry, construction, you're doing a lot with tools, where this is like, it's all of this and like a lot of sensitivity at the same time of a lot of like gross labor with them too. So trying to like manage that dexterity, and your hands are wet in the salt all day, and dealing with stuff that's like pretty much everything on the boat wants to hurt your hands. Like, right. So it's just like, yeah, it's been a really interesting, I guess, laboratory environment to think about.
Gloves are out of the question. Like, gloves are kind of like in the Northwest, like an umbrella. People are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Because that's where you're at. Yeah. So gloves, and there's a whole range of like what people wear, and like, talking to a friend about his captain who doesn't wear gloves ever, and just being like, holy cow. Like it's opened my world to also a lot of, yeah, just like I've been paying a lot of attention to people's hands, and just like looking at this, like, holy cow, this is a different kind. And that's like I feel like it's a difference in the like fitness and mobility, like more gym based worlds, is that it's like there's something going on in the hand that's hard to access unless you're doing that kind of work for that kind of time. Yeah.
And I guess take through a little bit like the hours on the boat, right? So when you talk about gym, right, there's typically this scheduled time of like, I'm going to pay attention to this, and this, like here, and then I leave, and then like it's whatever. So what is the time that you spend like daily, and then we can
right. There's a whole range, but like in season, and I'm new to this. Like, I'm not trying to pretend to be an expert really, but I've been doing it the past 2 years. And in season, in the like, it's 6 days a week, and I'm meeting my captain at like 2 in the morning, or no, at 3. I'm waking up at 2, meeting him at 3, and we're back at the dock by like 2 o'clock. So it's like an 11-hour-ish day, about an hour or so just going back and forth for him particularly, and then the rest of it pretty steady work.
Mm.
And yeah, so it's quite a bit, and I think that's one of the driving questions to me in terms of trying to talk about this work. And like other people are working far more than that, and other people are working quite a bit less. So it's like there's definitely a spectrum there. But the expectations of what you're doing on the boat, like it's just me and the captain in this particular scenario, and I'm quite, like I said, quite new, so he does a lot more, where on other boats in a two-person scenario, my role would be performing many more duties, would be measuring lobsters, etc. So
I think it's really interesting that after 2 years you're still a novice, right? In our
well, I
general
mean, I'm hard on myself, and that's like I definitely like have some facility, but I was talking yesterday with a friend who's been in the world for like 7-8 years in a range of places, and there's yeah, I think it's one of those things too, where I think about like my captain's been at it for 45 years, right? And that sort of like that kind of learning and facility is like, that's what I mean by saying novice, is like,
okay.
and it's definitely like, I I don't know how, like my sense is that quite a few people are paying attention in this way, but maybe not verbalizing it, maybe not like talking about it in this way. And it's been a lot of fun to approach people and with the like, what do you have to share and learn? It's a very much like watch and learn, but at the same time, you're not getting to watch a lot of people because you're only in this little world.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious on this hour commute, basically there and back, right? So what goes through your mind as you're on your way, knowing what you're in for, and then
Yeah.
what goes through your mind after a day's work when you're on your way back in?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are fishing offshore, and so they're quite a bit further away, and their commute is much longer. So there's a lot of napping that's happening. For me, year one, that time was all spent just like frantically trying to stuff bait pockets and keep up and like get to it. Like my hands, like my dexterity and stamina was like nowhere near where it needed to be. It was pretty much just like, oh my God, I can't do enough fast enough. I'm never going to be able to keep up. This is nuts. Feeling. And then last year was like, I could do my sort of morning prep tasks in terms of like baiting up and whatnot in about 20 minutes and then spend the rest of the time cruising. And that's where I started to like really love that environment for the mobility piece of like, if you think about, having that moving platform to then play around with inertia, with weight, with positioning, body positioning, and dealing with the like ribbing of captain being like, what are you doing, James Bond? Like, what are you up
Especially if
to?
there's only two of you, man.
Well, yeah, and that was the kind of thing of having in contrast to some of the like carpentry construction experiences where like maybe you're bringing a little bit of that to the workplace. There is kind of the like, he doesn't care as long as the work gets done, and whatever, like you have that, this is sort of my space to do it. Like I think about it kind of like bartending. It's like this is the terrain. This is like how I operate as a worker. Yeah, so that's what's happening there in those times. And I think it also was a like trying as much as I could to start like bringing warm up and recovery to the boat, of being like, I want to like get like not have to, I mean, on the morning end of it, waking up for me, especially in that peak season of like 2 a.m. and getting the body wanting to go, is like not the most fun. So doing warm up there, but especially on the recovery end, trying to like do some kind of movement through the day, like reflecting on some rock climbing experience, maybe, of like trying to shake things out and not have it be this like, I think the vast majority of folks are in the like just grunt through it, whatever the pain is, and also maybe use whatever it is that's getting you through. So but I'm trying the different approach, the manual approach, I guess.
So on your way home is different because you actually try to undo any of the.
Yeah, and that's another place where I've found I've been like really, and liking, because I've been consciously thinking about this as like wanting to take this kind of learning and share it, is like trying to use the stuff that's right there of like, no, we don't need the fancy like stick mobility tool. There's a gaff right here. Like we can pick up the gaff and use that for that same purpose. And that's what's like kind of fun about the lobstering world, is there's all like, if you're looking at it from that gym aid perspective, like you have this bander that the like tension on the bander that you're using for your grip strength and learning about your fingers is variable because it's all based on a rubber band. So add another rubber band, like your grip trainer, like cool. And yeah, just bringing that awareness to the daily practice of like, if we're doing these repetitious things, either we're really hurting ourselves doing it in a way that doesn't work, or we're figuring out better and better and better how to do it smoother and smoother and smoother.
Right. And I guess that's kind of part of it too, where this idea of metacognition, and when I'm doing something that I have labeled as mundane, am I going to disappear up here and think about next week or that person, or am I going to see this thing? Am I going to be able to do it and look at myself from the outside doing it to kind of make it in itself something that is interesting?
Yep. Yeah.
I wonder, right, that skill set to go deeper into it, where it comes from. Like, does it come from a certain type of mind? Does it come from, you know, if someone doesn't have a background in the movement world who understands all these variables and all the layers of stuff, like maybe they can't because they don't, right? It's like, I get into something I don't understand. And maybe I don't want to understand it. I just want to get through it to get my paycheck, fill the tub, and then go home.
Yeah, I think that's there. I'm coming also, I think maybe I alluded to it a little bit in the email that I shared with you, of another like angle into this has been, I don't know your story over there, whether it's same, but the story of opiate use and sort of how that has come into the world of musculoskeletal problems, and a lot of targeted focus on construction trade, on fishing trade. And in being part of it, just recognizing that there's also a whole sociological component, a whole social component of like the folks who are doing this work and stereotypes and stories told about them. And my sense also in that way is that there is for a lot of folks, there's a profound like shame about themselves and this work, and to feel that this is dumb and stupid. And I think that plays in especially to the like then the reverse of it, of like, this is about machismo now, and that's the stereotype, where again, that's the stereotype, but what I've found is like, holy cow, it's not the whole picture. There's a lot of people that have, you know, if you are doing this work for 40 some years, right, you are definitely figuring out like something interesting in your body, whether it's like a radical compensation. And that's the other like thing that I can't get enough of watching, is just seeing like, oh, where people's bodies have formed to this work, and like, yeah, I can perform this task, but this is my position, like this is where I am. And that's been something that like, with that knowledge going in, all of the stories about break the body, being like, no, I don't want to do that. And so being really conscious of like, and there were pretty radical shifts pretty rapidly that I was noticing in terms of imbalance in the body, that I was amazed at that. Like it was I think I tried to say that in the email, of the like catching it at this weird point in my life where I had enough sort of like facility in myself and experience, but also enough like actual physiological adaptability left to do, and plasticity. But yeah, I don't know what it is that pulls out, because it's part of it, I think for me was just the necessity of it, of like, it's a repetition, unlike, I haven't worked a line in a factory, so I don't know like repetition in that way. But this thing of like, you're doing the same, there's variation, there's quite a bit of variation, but you're doing the same operation, and it's a complex operation, but each trap requires X number of operations, and you're doing you know, a range like maybe 200 to 300 a day of that, and that's your work day, plus all the attendant activities. So it's like it's a pretty narrow like,
Right.
but again, what I found is the like it's actually quite full bodied. And I think, I don't know if you've run across the like, I think it was someone Langer maybe, about the placebo effect of mindset matters. And the, like the study that they had used was about chambermaids, people working in hotels.
Oh,
And
saying that they don't exercise.
yeah, and saying like this group is told like, yes, the work you're doing is exercise, and this group is told like, no, it's not. And that outcome, and thinking the same thing in these kind of trade work positions of like, if we tell this story about this breaks you, like you're trying to avoid that. And then on the other side again, you have some like, no, it's machismo, athletic, like whatever, but being like, is there kind of, I'm looking for more the like, I think about your kind of style. It's like, I think of it, I don't want to name for you what your style is, but like, when I think about this overall ecology of like mobility world, it's, there's none of the like rah warrior, make yourself, like there's none of that. And that's the kind of conversational space I'm trying to find, thinking about the sociological, thinking about the like the long-term stamina piece, thinking about the like yeah, how to really get that conversation happening, that awareness and that invitation to say like, I don't know what your background is with movement or whatever, but like you've been doing something for a long time, and I think you probably have something to share about it. And
Right.
like, and that's the like the other thing that's been neat about it is watching the learning go on of like the engagement, I think, between like me and my captain, and how the dynamic has changed, and the work has actually changed, and the like the style has actually changed, and seeing like, wow, you've been at this for this long, and it's still, you're still
Right.
keeping it fresh. And that seems to be another key in keeping that like outside of like, there's always learning that can happen.
Right. Go into that relationship a little bit more, because again, it's just you two on a boat, right? And
Right.
the guy who's been at it for,
Yeah.
40 something years, he's like, I got it down. And here's
Yeah.
this young buck
Yeah.
doing all these weird things. I mean, he must watch you. He must, even if he's ribbing you, there's some kind of interaction. So
Yeah.
how do you
No,
use
definitely.
that to kind of involve ourselves in a dialogue and communicate about what's happening within you?
Yeah, it's been, for me, the whole, that kind of dialogue has been settling more and more into like humble of just like, I am looking and learning and paying attention and interested, and having to learn that like, you know, like I said, when I first started this, I was used to thinking of myself as like having capable, like I thought of myself as relatively strong individual, like, and I was just brought right back to that, like, like, holy cow, like, this is impossible. This is just impossible. Like, my hand doesn't work. Like, I don't see how this is going to happen. And I've had a really unique scenario in that I know, like, I'm close friends with the person, like if you think about it, sort of generate like there was my captain, and then the person who was working for him sort of trained me, and then he's friendly also with the person who worked before him, and I'm close friends with that person too. So I've had a lot of dialogue about this where I've been able to ask open questions, really like nuts and bolts questions, and each of them are kind of insider outsider characters to this place as well. Like fishing was not part of themselves from when they grew up, they came into it later in life, and so they've approached it this way too. Like the one guy I learned from used to be a professional snowboarder, so he has some like athletic vocabulary that he brings to it, and
So
then this other,
you got to learn a little bit about the context of it from others before you.
well, both, it was actually a pretty ideal like work training program of like at the end of one season being approached and like, do you want to try this next season? You'll work for me for the next month. Try it out, see how it works, see if we work together. Yeah, no, definitely. And then the like that learning dynamic in particular for me, the social piece of it, of having, I've not had the best experience with like workplace bosses, like, and it's been like that social dynamic of work has been a hard thing. And having this one-on-one of like zeroing it in to like, there's only one person that you've got to interact with, and being able to like, he's a unique individual. Like I've never encountered someone with as like calm a demeanor in this, like, and he's got like, he has his moments for sure, but we just like, I've never met someone so focused on the work of it and like so so interested in that. And so that way of like having a little bit of give and take, and him having some patience and willingness to like he'll show me how he'll do it, but also appreciates that I'm the one doing the task. And if my body, and that was, I mean, that was hard at first, like some things of being like, especially when it comes to like spatial relations and things with just ways of doing so. Someone has a notion of like, you need to do it this way. It's, but I think appreciating also the like the pace of a biological, like a physiological learning process is it like, it really takes time. And I think getting that through to like people that just have a job that they need to get done don't always have that kind of patience.
He eventually, you know, under the direction of do it this way, he was open to you like saying, well, could I also do it this way?
Well, and and I wouldn't even say that was really a conversation so much as just like, you know, I'm trying to see what these people who have been doing this kind of stuff for a long time are moving at like lightning pace, and you're, as the learner, trying to differentiate this complex system, where at first it's like, I'm looking at the level of like, this is a lobster trap and it's just this 4 foot by 2 foot by 18-inch box, and I don't know it specifically. I don't know its anatomy. I don't know the lobster's anatomy. I don't know how to hold anything. And I'm just like, like looking and watching. And also they're lightning quick. So you're trying to watch these processes, and I don't like, same as some learning any kind of physical skill, if it's happening with any kind of power or dynamism, trying to slow that down sometimes is like, you don't, you just like, I'm just going to show you a bunch of times and you watch and then try to make your body do it, and like we'll see what happens. And the willingness, what I really got, especially from the like, not the captain but the guy who was more training me, was just an unbelievable coach, in the sense of the like, absolutely you can do this, like this feels impossible, and recognizing that huge social component of the presumption of capacity, like, and is like, you gotta have it. And that's like, I think that's something that a lot of employers don't always recognize, of like, you're dealing with someone that might be coming from a hard set of circumstances and been told they can't do something a lot, and that's entering into it, and like, but you might. So, and I think I mentioned also just any kind of like, my wife Liz is a diesel mechanic, so she's like, our conversations are about that too, in terms of underrepresented in a trade and that sort of thing of like the learning environment is greatly augmented by like assuming that you can do something, or that everybody learns, and that it takes time to adapt.
That's very interesting, this social component that you're bringing in, and as you're talking, I'm listening, but I'm also thinking. So I spoke to you about a lot of my students being field workers. So the high school I work at is in the middle of this like agricultural mess fed, and it was interesting because even though, so it's a Latino population, and even though like 80+% of the students are Latino, there is a weird hierarchy within the Latino community as to, in my perspective, looking at it, is kind of like, how American are you? And I don't know if I'd go as far as how white, that just sounds terrible, but definitely like, how long have you been here? How well can you speak English? Like being a newcomer and being someone who came here to work in the fields was certainly like a bottom of, you were definitely looked down upon. I remember specifically having some kind of conversation in class about someone was saying that I had to go to work, and another kid trying to make fun of him pipes up, yeah, he works in the fields picking strawberries. And so I looked at this kid and I said, do you eat strawberries? He said, yeah. And it was like, well, shouldn't you be thanking him? And it was just like this weird,
Yeah.
So it makes me think if there's a societal, if the perception is that because I do this labor, I am less than, and or I am expendable, whereas the reality is actually it's reverse. But if I am less than, then I certainly am not going to complain. And I'm certainly not going to reach out for help because who am I to deserve it? And it's interesting because I specifically asked one of my students who I knew worked in the field, and I was like, hey, is there anything that I can put together for you specifically for your, like, you know, being in that position all this time, and et cetera, et cetera. And she emailed back, not at this time, but thank you. And it was almost a down, I'm like, huh, right? I wonder if part of that was, it could absolutely be like, I'm fine, I'm young, like I get it.
Yeah.
But
That's the other piece that has fed into this, like before I got on the boat, in retrospect, like as soon as we moved here to Deer Isle, I should have tried to get on a lobster boat, just like socially speaking as well. But just because of how huge it is here, and that when I say that, like it's there's a whole range of opinions about it, like space of like stereotype about this being like dumb labor to sort of elevating it to like some also inaccurate hero status. That's like we're somewhere between that,
right?
And I can appreciate like on the long days, like yeah, you can think all kinds of narratives in your head about yourself and what you're up to, but the other piece of the component is I did spend one semester coaching basketball, where that was like I had no business doing it, but I needed a part-time job and I needed a coach. And the learning that happened there in terms of like what is going on with like kid learning and how to, I don't know, just it was another place where in that world, the stereotype that I thought really hard about was all the like device use, screen time things, and a lot of adults being like, that's the reason that they don't know how to play basketball, that's the reason they don't know how to do anything, and just being like, I don't know about that. But then having these really cool improvisational moments, like one time the kids on the team started talking to each other in PlayStation code of like a basketball game and using the like trying to emulate the motions but talking in buttons. And after having spent all year being like, guys, can you talk to each other on the court at all? If you need to talk button talk, like cool, like do it. And that just sort of the like, I don't know, that's what I think about with, I come back to thinking about Liz in her world, in the diesel world. And when she was in school for that, we were talking a lot about the, like, I don't know, just bringing that kind of like dignity and honor to this work generally, and an acknowledgement that if we're talking about sustainability in the body, there isn't unskilled labor. That's my like feeling about it. And that's like from a lifetime of living around manual laborers and being like part of it and feeling like tracked in some ways. I inhabited a really hybrid place in that respect. I saw a lot of different kind of work going on. But it just like, that's the social, like what you're describing, that sad story of that kind of classing of labor in student world of like, it's just got it. And it's a huge contributor to that kind of like feeling and health outcome, I think. Right. And that like, and that's where I'm driven, is this feeling of, when I pay attention to the literature, the sociological literature, the public health literature about opioid use, etc., is like, and see the cultural stereotyping that's happening there. Like if you go into CDC and think about the workplace wellness stuff, there's like stuff about how like, yeah, wearables are really cool, like wearable data, like Fitbits and those things, those are cool, but we just don't know if they're going to work in poor communities. And you're like, why? What, in what universe does that make sense? But that's official literature. Like
those are different types of people. They're not our
like I can't abide by it anymore. And that's the like, and that's what I like, that's what's exciting though about seeing this kind of like mobility universe. I described to you the like world of like, I've worked with a PT who's been great here, and like really met me at that place where I hadn't, like part of this journey too has been back in construction. I'm getting shoulder pain. I'm waking up with numb hands, like just like, this is not good. This is not fun. Trying to do things like someone tells me use a wooden handled hammer, that helps. And I'm like, okay, I'll try that and do. But again, through the lobstering, but go to a doctor and talk about that. And their response is, well, you know, the human body just wasn't really designed for overhead labor. So you're going to want to avoid that. And you're just like, okay, I'll try my best.
It's
Like,
funny how
but
the
that's
fix
not
to everything
working for me right now. Like,
just
you have
stop.
a house, like you're asking someone to do that labor, right? And that's, so anyway, meeting a PT who being like lobster world, I started to come back to that kind of numbness and like having crazy, like just like way faster than I wanted to. I tried to get out of manual trades because I didn't want to destroy my body. And here I found myself in a position where I needed to, and finally got met by a medical provider, young peer PT, surprise, being like, oh yeah, we can work this. Like, here's what we're going to do. Here's the, like, we're going to try some needles. We're going to try some cups. We're going to do these. Importantly, we're going to get you involved in being a part of this and doing that work. And like, I mean, in me, like I'm like wanting to be a part of that. So that is facilitated, but also driving into the like Instagram mobility world that is huge, that anybody knows about, but trying to navigate it and make use of it is like, and I actually have found it quite useful to navigate and finally find like, okay, sort of narrow in of like, yeah, there is the like ego in me that sees the like rah like warrior folks and is like, yeah, but then there's the other part of me that hears all the tribe talk and is like, whoa, like that's a little worrisome too. Like, can we find something that's a little more, I don't know, work a day, a little more like, this isn't hero stuff. This is like helping people manage and also finding peace in that work. Like,
Right. And I guess, consider the context. If you're working on a boat for, 10, 11 hours, you could care less about a muscle up. Do you know what I mean? It's
well,
when you don't
yeah.
have that physical stimulation and you're like, I have all this, but I don't have to do anything with my body. So I'm going to make up all this stuff to do with it to kind of be fit. And it kind of goes as to why worlds are the way they are. I mean,
Yeah.
all those like, Insta million people, like they look the same, they talk the same, they act the same, they freakishly smile when they're doing stuff, like very unnaturally.
It does help. It does help. It helps so much. Smiling is so important. I hear you. It is, I don't know what that world is. And I think that's the other thing that I think about though, when I come back to the CDC version, and that is that like the target consumer there is a little bit different than this kind of worker of like, if we're in CDC land trying to recommend that largely sedentary like office workers get more than 75 minutes of work a week, is like every day by 5 o'clock I've been like, by 5 o'clock on the lobster boat, I've moved 1,200 pounds of something from here to there. And like, I've done a lot. And so it's a different process. They're like, and that's where the conversations with peers tend to be more about the recovery components and more about like a way more fine-grained approach to that. Like I said, the hand fetishist thing of learning that like, holy cow, if I'm not taking care of like my cuticles in a kind way, I'm going to be feeling that through the day, and that's going to ricochet up the whole chain, and that's going to impact the way that I'm doing work. And that's the like, I think there's so much richness, like so much easy, low cost richness being lost in this, and like opportunity for engagement of someone in their own health practice by sharing what they know, like, or are wondering about, or like,
I mean, so important, because again, we're trained that fitness, wellness looks like this.
Yeah.
Right. And then the average laborer is like, I don't got time or energy for that. And they don't recognize that actually.
And that's why I'm wanting to reach out to you as well, is some of the like, I wonder if the training isn't a little bit different too, of like this labor of I don't know, it's another both and, where I think there's a lot of different edges that we're sort of like between here. But like on the one hand, I think when we're talking about the workplace training, so much emphasis is put on like, okay, it's the repetitious movement, and we've got to like just figure out the best part for that repetitious movement. Like in the lobstering world, there's videos and studies about breaking traps over the side of the boat, and that's the thing that people talk about. And it is hard labor, but but I really think the like sense of the global holistic body and how is the body being cared for, and approaching that any individual task of like, if you have that sense that is like emphasized in these mobility worlds of the stable core, no matter where you are, where like on the boat, it becomes sort of obvious that it is necessary. Like nothing is stable ever. And you're trying to do things without your hands and move and balance between that. And you can either do what a lot of people do and lean and lock yourself into a body position, but that has its cost. And so trying to be like, if you take the, yeah, I don't know, how do you get people to be excited about having like a stable mobile core? I don't know. Like it's not
and I guess that's the rub though. It's going to sound counterintuitive, but your job isn't to get people excited about things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the emotional component of what you put out there, like you have to let, like for me, it's just like every day I'm going to drop this. I'm going to drop it and I'm going to leave it. Now you can like it, not like it, right? But what I'm dropping is always kind of part of a finding, part of a process that I found interesting. So when I mean, in listening to you, it's like, yes, all this stuff that you're saying. And to be honest, I don't know another person other than I mentioned Andre Miller, at Rufus.
Yeah, that was a great resource too. I've had a lot of fun looking at that spot.
Yeah, and he's super amiable guy. So you could just like drop him, his email, everything's on the site. You could just drop him and he'd talk to you about it. But this idea that I'm using my body every day to do something productive, it isn't compartmentalized. So literally just sharing that as a concept again and again and again and again, it will find who you want to find. And the timeline is not yours to really.
Right.
So an example would be like, if you're like, you know what, like, I think this think movement thing is open enough to, it would be like, absolutely. Like, I'd be like, yes, let's put something out there that is like, it's your work on the wall. And everybody connected to this website is like, take a look at this. And again, because you don't know everyone who's looking at it, you know this idea of numbers, and there's some kind of stuff, but you don't know who's going to find meaning in that. It could be a regular person who gardens and is like, oh, right.
Yeah. Well, and that's, those are the, I find it a lot. I find myself having these kinds of conversations with parents about like when they're trying to like figure out movement with kids, and then also with older folks of like, and trying to, in yoga classes and whatnot, finding the people that are trying to getting excited. It's the same sort of principle of saying like, what are you doing? How are you bringing this into your life? And hearing like, I was hearing from an 85-year-old person how every time she puts on her shoes, she's trying to stand on one foot for a little bit longer each time, and being like, yeah, like that's a way, and like just building it into the package rather than going to the gym, and trying to find that. I think there's just the dual point there with the workers. Like,
do you have a current social media, a current way of putting things out there?
No, I mean, I'm sitting here, like, I found you on Instagram, and I have my Instagram, and if you look through it, you'll see like movement here, movement there, and I've been playing around with it and just trying to like really spending some time with it and trying to find like, what is the voice here, what is the like message, and how to negotiate. Like, I mean, part of the question has been like, gosh, like this world of certification, like I've long thought like, exactly, but also just trying to feel like, but I also want to be a responsible human that is like, I'm not trying to I do have people that approach me and are like, wow, like I'm seeing some, like, it looks like you've got something that's working for you. Like, what is it? And not liking the answer of like, well, I just like really like to explore my own
Mm-hmm.
self and surroundings, and like, um, yeah, and I think that's something that I'm kind of struggling with, is the feeling of the world wants you to have the packaged program.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the world that if you're trying to monetize, like
Right.
definitely double
Mm-hmm.
so, but that is feeling a little bit antithetical to the kind of program and process that I'm interested in. Of like the chancy piece of it is what has sort of seems to work. Yeah.
Right. And so I think, so I don't really like, I don't know your Instagram, and
Yeah, yeah.
maybe after this I'll take a look at it. But if I'm looking at this as, okay, how do I get this idea out there?
I think it's person to person is where I'm at right now. But
What's that?
oh, I just like, it's nice to be like, most of these kinds of conversations that I have are met with people being like, hold up, you're making a, like, that's a generalization about public health literature. And like,
Mm.
it's to like go there and roll rather than like getting that pushback.
Yeah. So, but I mean, and that's like what you as a person through your experience find true is your truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And this is the idea about changing people's minds. It's not my job to change your mind. I'm just going to keep showing what I think is true and how it all connects.
Mm-hmm.
And without me saying anything, it's all going to be there. So if I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
at you, I would have some kind of descriptor, right? It would be something like everyday labor, like at everyday labor.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, now I have this, and this is where, which as I'm listening to you, that's kind of the nomenclature that comes out. Again, you can call it what you want,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but basically all you are doing is promoting the idea that everyday stuff, and that, like you said, low cost, no cost, like labor and utilizing your body consistently every day and during long periods of time, like that in itself
It
is the
counts.
mechanism
Yeah, yeah.
in which to find both health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure if that's exactly what you're looking for, but if
Yeah,
listening,
yeah. I'm not really sure what I'm looking for, right? I'm searching a little bit, and like one thing, there's two pieces that I want to ask you to speak a little bit to, just in terms of like how you found your way into physical education specifically, like that spot, and what feel like you're associated with a school, yes?
yeah, I teach at a
Yeah.
public high school.
Yeah, so and that's like, I think about that after the coaching experience of like a school feels like a place, and that was a moment. But again, like I don't have the physical education degree or certificate or whatever. But then the other piece is a tweak on it, of the perspective of like trying to sort of like humanize, right, in the social sense, but in that same literature on workplace wellness, and specifically in these kind of trade-based labors, is when it does go to the more social component, there's often an emphasis on like, we need to get to a place where we don't think about our bodies as machines.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think it's the opposite of
Right.
like we do need to like think about the way that we take care of the gear on the boat, like how the engine is babied, how the hauler is babied, and like the labor component we're treating as expendable instead of a fixed cost. And
Right.
saying if you're in that laborer position, it really is just up to you to like navigate it and do your best. And like, you're responsible for your PPE, you're responsible for your this. And like, maybe that's not true at bigger firms, but the reality, as I'm reading it, of our world is that we're more and more self-employed 1099. It's on you, it's on you, it's on you, it's on you. And that's, so then when I think about the other kind of environment that I'm imagining is like some of the like online coaching programs that are quite low cost. Like I think about Athletic Truth Group and like the knees over toes guy. I don't know if you've seen him, but like that stuff is like,
around. Yeah.
yeah, right. He's around, right?
Yeah.
But like that sort of thing, but in this kind of vein of like sort of a is it a group? Is it like it's a peer-to-peer kind of idea of like an extension? Like my sense talking to my peers who I'm learning some of this stuff and have benefited from, like one of them is very vocal about like, the reason I've been forthcoming and talking with you is that I didn't get this help in this industry. I got the, like, you figure it out on your own and I'm not sharing anything with you.
Yeah.
And just in like, in a total package way, in terms of like, what is an expected pay scale? Like everything is up in the air. And I think that's the kind of, it's like, I don't know, this is the like even cheaper than that, because I'm not actually going to give you a program to do stuff, but like, I just want to hear about it and talk about it. And like, what's the problem that you're noodling on right now? And that utility of like, yeah, just that's what I miss about the sports. Like when I think back to organized sports, I think about not the actual practice or the games or anything, but the warm up time. And when people are sharing and bringing their, like, I don't know, maybe they're bringing it from this other experience they had, and you're getting to see like, that's a different way that someone's stretching and taking care of themselves. Like that's, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I had 2 questions.
Yeah.
Just because it's fresh in my mind, let me take on that human component first, and then I'll kind of talk about the PE thing. And as you're talking, the idea that comes to mind is mechanization, right? So if a machine can do it better than a human, more efficiently, more effectively, they're going to make a machine.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is
right? Which means if there aren't machines for certain jobs, humans aren't expendable, right?
Which is a good thing.
Which is what you want, which is how we maintain whatever it is that we have. So I think that goes to the value of society being like, you're just a meager laborer, and that person being, I guess so, I don't have this education that can get me out of this, because who would want to do this? And then the owners being like, yeah, I can go get that guy for cheaper if you don't do X, Y, and Z. So part of it is these people recognizing their value. And like in this quarantine, and you think about this idea of essential workers, like I wouldn't be eating if there weren't people picking food in the grocery store. People weren't doing their job, right? Yeah. So as a society, the society needs to figure out where that value is, and needs to treat them in that way. Now, I don't really, as far as influence, I don't know where the pressure comes from. The society pressures the owner, right? But I think generally that is how that person values themselves enough to recognize that they are the most important thing. Now, when you don't use your body for work, my whole thing is again saying, like, this system that you inhabit is more valuable than anything you can get anywhere else. So let's just try to utilize it. Let's work with it. And this is the same way as far as in the labor, etc. So, but the labor is even more so because this thing and the endurance of this thing, like you said, this impossible work, which I can't even, right? I almost can't even fathom what it takes that these people do every day for weeks and months on end, that this is their normal, right? So the ability to place value, that they have to take care, you talked about the bits and pieces, they have to take care of their body, this machine, this mechanism, they need to know and understand what maintenance is. If I relied on my car to get me where I needed to go to make money, or etc., to leave or whatever I need to do, I'm going to make sure my oil's changed. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to look at the tires and be like, don't those right. Maybe I'll make an appointment. I'm going to do all those things because I value this thing and I recognize how lost I would be without it.
Yeah.
Same thing for the body. So just getting people to kind of understand that, I think, is the human side. When it comes to, like, the PE side and how that all happened, as I think about it, teaching, I have a kinesiology background. So I was going to be pre-physical therapy, but then I don't really know if I shadowed people and was like, I don't want to do that, or just something in my brain was like, you do not want to look at the same knees, shoulders all day doing the same thing. So before that, as soon as that pre-physical therapy ended, I switched into the bigger kinesiology. Got my kinesiology degree, which was, again, this broad look at the body. Kind of moved out to Oregon and then was like, all right, I have this degree, but again, nobody cared, because we're the people who have believed in these degrees, have been like, I need this degree, and the entire world didn't care. So I started working, I stocked shelves at Target, and I started working at this group home because, again, they were hiring a job. They didn't care what my degree was, but in the group home, which is kind of you live in with disabled individuals.
Yeah.
I started recognizing how much joy the little things that I took for granted could give somebody else. Like if someone would go to the bank, like he would literally lose his stuff with joy that it was bank day, or brushing their teeth, like all these little things. It was like, oh, so I recognize there, like that what you get back from teaching, and that it doesn't necessarily cost you anything, maybe time and effort, but just the ability to shift someone's perspective on something, or to be able to see from their perspective. So I actually used that gig because it was a Monday through Friday like live-in. So actually I take that back. It was a weekend. It was a Friday through Sunday, and they had a computer and I didn't. So I enrolled in a master's program. I worked there Monday through I worked there Friday at 2 through Sunday at 10. Use their computer, write my papers, and then I can go to class during the week. So I got my master's in teaching somehow, and this is the way the world works for me. And I recognize it, but I get out of school and I get a job that summer. Like I graduate in June, I have a job by July, which is unheard of in the PE, but again, it fell into place. And then, so then you start doing PE, and then you're looking at, I was health PE. You're looking at what everybody else does in the system that you're in, because I didn't know this high school or this community or anything. And you mimic, and you start mimicking and doing things like everybody else because you're a part of the group, and like, this is how we do things here. And then it takes about 5 years or so when you start questioning what people are doing. You just stop doing the things you don't agree with, and you wait for like damnation to come, and nothing happens. And so you're like, okay, let me add more and more and more of me to this. And when I say me, I meant the perspective on other things. And that just kind of gradually ebbed and flowed to now I'm doing this thing that is entirely student. They lead me into what they need. It's like even the distance learning right now, right? Many of my peers are like, do this workout, do this workout, do this workout. Here's 5 workouts, pick 2. And it's one of these things, and it's like, hey, do you want to do your own thing, or do you want me to give you something? Right? What here for those of you who want to follow, because those people exist, and I don't want to judge those people. People need what they need. Here's this option for you, right? Go for it. Don't think about it, and that's fine. And all you other ones, right? Let's kind of dig into what you chose and why.
Yeah.
So you offer these options and these parallel tracks, and this kind of all works into, I work one-on-one with people in pain, which is, like you said, the one-on-one with your boat boss. It's very different one-on-one relationship where you're looking at one thing. When I have a group of 45 kids, right, I'm going to kind of follow the majority, or those who are loudest, but I'm also going to pay this like particular attention to the ones that aren't into it. The ones in back, I think about, I coach volleyball, and that was like, oof, that was like teen angst. Like I was everything I thought it, like coaching volleyball to be. These girls would love volleyball. They would totally want to get better at it. None of it was true. It was all this like weird mean girls hierarchy. Why am I not playing? They're all playing. You're terrible at volleyball. You don't come to practice. Like it was all these, in my mind, it was duh, but they needed to learn it and be taught. And it's the same, who in the class is going to teach me otherwise? Not the kids that are like, this is great, but the ones that are like, this sucks. So I'm not going to take it personal that this sucks, but I'm going to have this kind of, while they're playing, I'm going to have this kind of private conversation. Like, so why is it, like, how can we improve this?
I think, that's rare in a teacher. I do think, and it's like a really key skill. And I think teachers that are excited about teaching as a teaching process too, of finding that like, you can be the best at a skill and not really know how to teach it, or not be able to teach it. And that's, I don't know, they're very different, and they're related. And that's another piece to the puzzle here, is that here in Deer Isle, there's also, there's a Haystack school that's like craft school, art craft school. So there is like there's an interesting intersection happening there between like arts and crafts world, and like it's schismed really hard from this fishing world in a way that I think is totally artificial. But it's another like piece of the puzzle of like, can we take some of that like craft vocabulary and stitch it over here? And it happens in some way, but just that like, that kind of, I look at that, how to, I guess everything is like always adapting and changing, right? And like we want to tell the story about fishing and lobstering that this is how it's always been, we've always done it this way, even though that's not necessarily true. And keeping the fresh adaptation is what keeps it alive and keeps it going.
When is lobster season? Like, what is the?
I mean, it's all year. Like people go offshore all year, but the peak season in terms of when the shedders are coming is later in the summer. So, and it's been variable, and the seasons have been shifting in the past couple of years. Like that's the other piece that's interesting, is that the way that the industry looks right now. And again, like there's so many people that like if they heard me talking like as if I were knowledgeably about it right now, they would be like, "What is you?" But it's fascinating. Like the way that the industry looks is different now in the past like 20 years from how it has ever been before in terms of the gross numbers. Like there's been a lobster boom, that there's all kinds of yes, this is about migration and coming up. No, this is like all those same sort of climate changey debates are happening all over the place. But that's the broader picture of it. So yeah, the primary season the past 2 years, my captain threw his gear in the water in like late May, and then we were out by early December. So it's an interesting season in that way too, where it's like early in the season too, it takes kind of like a warm up rehearsal phase. You're not going out every day, and then when it picks up, you're going out more regularly. And that's that's where, I don't know, the learning of what that kind of endurance over a season is, and how to take care of yourself through that season and navigate the like how a body shifts doing that kind of work in that way. Like it's
So as I think about, how this idea of how do I get my message out there, the big answer is that you have to go to them.
Yeah, I know. And you're right. That's been what I've settled into, is the slowness of it, and really delighting in that slowness of like these like years of conversation now with the workmates are feeling like, oh, this is like quite quick actually, if I think about it in a bigger way, and trying to like just broaden that reach a little bit, and seeing the value of the person to person piece of like,
but I think of even that time frame. So it's like when is the openness, when is the window open for, is it before the season, is it mid-season when you're wrecked and you're
right.
But if it is mid-season, right, are these people going to want to, like, when they're already exhausted, going to want to come to a workshop kind of thing? So and this is why I also recognize my advantage is that the people come to me, like the kids come to me, right? So I just show up and I just kind of tinker, and I'm just orchestrating this thing, but I never have to worry about people showing up because they're going to show. Now in this distance learning, it's interesting because now it's all like, who's turning the work in, right? And it's very fascinating to be like, seniors who don't have to do that work are still turning the work in, and it's very like puzzling to me. And part of it is like, do you know that you don't have to do it? But the other bit is like, wow, like even though you don't have to do it, you're still doing it. So it must be engaging in some way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
well, and just especially in this terrain, especially in the like physical and like health terrain, that engagement of like, that's what's going to serve people in the long run. Or that's what I found is like, that's what's kept me along in it, is just my mother was an occupational therapist as well, so that's another like piece of the puzzle, is that it was like watching her problem solving with clients and hearing about that. And she's been pushing an idea lately of like really wanting wanting thinking in terms of like K through 12 anatomy curriculum. And I come back to that sort of idea too, of like you're coming in with the body, right? And we can learn the body in a lot of different ways, like starting quite early, I think, and that kind of, that's something that the PT has facilitated for me, is the more anatomical piece of it that is fascinating to like, just trying to have that conversation with peers too, of like, no, but where is the tingling in your hand? Like, which finger is it? And like, do you want to look at the map of how that nerve works, and trying to just like I don't know. It's like you said, you're not like, I'm not trying to convert anyone or anything, but just having that person to person conversation. Like, yes, I have had that nightly like pain in my hand, and here is what I found that worked. Like,
Exactly.
yours if you want it. And like, I hear you doing that broomstick raise. Like, if you've never done that before and you get to here and that's your stopping point, that's where I was too. Like, absolutely.
There's like these two, I feel in general, there's these two facets that people want in general. They want to understand themselves better. And,
Uh-huh.
regardless of the friends they have around and the discussions that they have in their social circle, most of the time they have to pay someone to
Yeah.
have those deep engagements. And the other is, how do I do what I'd like to do better, or I
Yeah.
do better? So
Yeah.
how do I understand myself, and how can I make this thing that I do easier and better? Like,
Mm-hmm.
as long as what like you put out revolves around those two things. Because again, if you're showing how it helps you understand yourself, right? Because there's this weird thing between in like fixing, but I don't know if fixing is necessarily correct. I think it's more of understanding,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that they're after.
Yeah, and the participation thing of like the difference in terms of, I don't know, I'm thinking about an interaction I had with a guy, and because I'm interested in the social component of it too, and thinking about like these kinds of conversations with peer like men stereotyped over and over and over again. So like, I don't want to talk about this, I don't want to talk about this, I don't like, and being like that, yeah, that's a stereotype and it comes from, but like again, the like interior experience is often like, it's not that far under the surface, the like person that wants to be like recognized for some like for something, and that if you can get that recognition early, like something can change there. And this like that participatory piece of being the newcomer to the industry and being like, I really don't know. Like, I
Right.
really don't know
And
what
being
I'm
able to
doing.
say that.
And, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, the like, if I can like take pride for one asset in that, it's like it's that piece of just like, I like that edge of feeling that unknowing and being like, my body really does not know how to do this.
Right.
Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. I remember I was learning to trying to figure out windsurfing a while back, and it took a I was not good at it at all. And when I finally did get it a little bit, there was this young kid who had been on the shore watching, and I heard I heard her saying, he's doing it, he's not just falling over. And it was just
Right.
like, yeah, like that kind of, I don't know, that there's never a wrong time for that kind of honest encouragement, I think, is what I'm figuring out.
And
Slowly.
that's the other thing too, where like social media can come into play, in that it can. Now, I do not recommend you relying on it,
No.
but
Well, and it's not, yeah, it's
it
not
can
the,
bring that.
mm-hmm. But I think there is like real usefulness though, of like, I'm someone who that like that sort of random inputting of like, I like, you today put up a thing about your like toes and the little block on your heel, and I'm, that sort of fine grained work, I think too, is particularly what is like hard for, like, I find it hard for people, have a hard time getting their head around it sometimes, of seeing it demonstrated, of like those little activities that the physical therapist is suggesting, of like, if you're like, yeah, it really does help. And like, I appreciate that you're scared of like what you might find in there. But
And that, right, and I completely agree. And that's why when you're actually trying to work when someone says, hey, let me know what you know, help me,
yep.
it starts with that person.
Yeah.
Right. I would never jump in and be like, hello, first day person, like, let's get this right. This worked for me this morning, you're gonna love it. Like, anything you do might not matter, they might not care. What is their issue? How can I listen to them? How can I find like the biggest, the most accessible gap that I challenge and have them find success in? That's it. Right.
Yep.
That we might never get to that might not be important to them. That might be like, you fix me, I'm gone. All of that it's when you are actually working with someone. And I think, I think this is where like the payment piece, there's like an expectation on the payment piece. So like, we're talking right now, right? And I feel it's very mutual and reciprocal as far as stimulation, like understanding, getting something out of it. When someone pays you to do something,
right,
they're expecting some kind of result
Yeah.
Right? So as long as you have to kind of say what you're doing out loud and keep aligning it for them, because in the
Right.
beginning they're not going to get it. They're going to be used to what they know and what didn't work, but they're not going to know why it didn't work.
Yep.
So you have to,
Yep.
right? Like I just did this group. They wrote something on a board and I just did it. And this is like the opposite. So
Yep.
how do we
Yep.
bridge that gap? What is one thing of that list that you had trouble with? Let's look at that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And what piece of that can we, like, right there? Can we just look at that and then fix or adjusting that
Yep.
awareness to that, and then, oh, just that little piece made this that much easier. That's what we do here.
Yep.
Right? Find and plugging gaps.
Plugging gaps. Yeah, that's the other book I've worked out of in this world. I found a copy of an old copy of warfighting. It's a Marine Corps manual on warfighting, and it's really like it's not my world, but I found it incredibly useful in terms of some of those conversations about like just a way of thinking and approaching processes where if you didn't know it was the like warfighting manual, you would think it was written by like some nonviolent Zen monk, like parts of it. Or seriously, it's like about fluidity and about uncertainty and like about navigating. And that's the like, I think that's when I come back to an earlier part in this conversation about talking about what are the like, instead of, it was the same thing in the basketball world. Like there was so much emphasis on these individual skills that are really important. And like, it's
But they don't
true.
understand space.
But
Like,
if you can't like get yourself from one end of the court to the other, then like I don't care. Like, you know, or I do care and I'm glad that you want to participate in these skills, but like that's also a skill set. Like that's also a piece. And that I think the two experiences of just learning to break it down into like, if we're not breaking it down into a skill and a teachable thing, and it's just on you to navigate and figure it out, then what are we doing here? What is that?
And that's the thing, right? If you find that a gap is so I don't want to say that it is so low level, like they need 12 steps underneath to get what they think that they're at, then it's like, okay, I need to give them what they need in a way that they're actually going to engage with it. So that's them making up of games or situations or making it competitive. That's where I think the credit is earned, because you can see it, but you have to deliver it in a way in which you're going to engage with it. Right? And teenage kids, you have to, with everyone you're working with, you have to get inside both their head and their body. Right? And a lot of times it's almost like literally having a different personality. You're looking and you're watching it, but you cannot explain things from your own point of view. It has to be through their eyes. So you have to get to know them first.
Yeah. I think that embodiment piece, I think, is the other point where I think about the social component too, of just like coming to realize as I'm getting older, like not only how long has it been taking for me to drop back into my body and the distance that like that is really enforced, I think, a lot of times for people in that of coming from being told you're no good at this, or coming like you're not the number one basketball person, so you don't matter or whatever, and being like, it's so dangerous. So that like realizing that as a necessary component to the learning process of like, if you're coming from a place where you don't want to be in this body doing this work, like no, you don't care about learning to do it better. Like so
exactly.
Yeah, I see what you mean, that like that necessary prerequisite. And that's the like, especially in the specific like fine-grained work that I see you doing, that like conversation about like in the like like the joint specific training, right, of like talking in terms of prerequisites, is like I think there's room for that kind of language and prerequisites in the social piece as well, like
absolutely. And I think maybe to kind of circle this on like how as far as like how you as a person put out what it is that's inside you. And I think the starting point is to always assume that there is a need for what you have to offer. You might not know who they are, where they are, exactly what they're doing, but to know that there's someone somewhere just hanging on, because it could be one person, right? Someone somewhere is going to be in the train and is going to have this kind of a thought. And lo and behold, they're going to come across what you do and they're going to get it, right? That person will bring, other people will bring, right? So I don't have any necessary type of scheme other than just
Right.
consistency and being like honest and authentic with what you're doing. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I don't have answers. This is what I saw was a problem, and this is how I addressed it. They are not equal, right? This is a possibility, not
Yeah.
a rule in
Right.
stone.
Right. Right. Right.
So, and then once you start to get that, you'll start to recognize the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the principles of the process, which is actually what you most have to give, because those are applicable anywhere.
Yeah. Do you have any like touchstone, like I was just mentioning a book that I like, do you have any like touchstone books in this kind of like physical learning, and like earlier when you were mentioning the like cognition piece and like that separation?
Yeah. I'm gonna sound like a real asshole right now, but I have so many books and things, and it wasn't until I really stopped reading, stopped looking for other people's answers, that I started to be like, I think I could figure this out. That's when everything took off. Is when I started shutting out the experts. And I just started listening. So everyone asks, and I'm like, I'm going to be a dick when I say this, but I'm like,
no.
I stopped reading. I stopped looking outside. And it isn't to say, that I will flick through something on Instagram or something else and be able to absorb what somebody else is doing, but I am over other people showing me the way.
Cool.
Like, I really just figure out my own.
Fantastic answer. That's a great answer. No, and I think that's, I don't know, I was thinking of the one other little lesson from Love Stream, what you were talking earlier about, something that made me think of it, of just the like sealing that aloneness with it, of like, yes, I'm with this other person, and yes, he's like got the resources, but the feeling of just like, there isn't anyone else to pass this buck to right now, and like, I know X and Y and I need to get to Y, and like, it's kind of miserable to get there, but here we are. And just seeing that sort of slow process, learning over time.
But the thing too is that, but there's something good there. This whole process of like, I need to capture this. I need to capture this, and then I need to give it away. So you just have to honestly keep following that instinct, because you know that it's worthwhile, right? It's like when you're doing your like whatever kind of movement and all that, you pause. Like I pause every time. I'm like, I don't know what this is or what it's for yet, but there's something interesting here. Capture it, right? So just that skill of recognizing what's important to be able to compile that set of truths for yourself. And the thing is that you're going to find that as your circle grows, and however it will organically grow, that other people are finding these same exact things. Right. And that isn't to belittle it, because you're finding it in different ways and through different experiences. But to know, this is like the thing, to know that you're not alone in it is it's almost encouraging, in that you're doing the same thing in your own way on your own tangents. And yet look, like our results are almost identical.
Yeah. And I think that's the sort of, that's been one of the crucibles of fishing, of having these, like, here there's 180 licenses right in the town. So that means that you have this like spectrum of like ways to look at it and see yourself in that way. And I think like connecting across a gap of that distance, of you being like, okay, well, this makes me think about field workers, is feeling the like, yes, in this whole mechanized world, there is this move towards sameness. And there's the deeply, deeply locally specific thing of like, if we still have these bodies, this body still needs to learn it. And that's the cool thing to me about these physical processes. Like, it has to learn, like it can't not. And that's the like, anyway, I don't want to take up your whole afternoon, but this has been really
it was awesome,
helpful, and I appreciate it. And do you have any like last questions or thoughts? Or
well, I guess my last is that we're going to keep in touch. Like, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more, particularly about getting a spot for you on Think Movement, because I really think, right? Because I remember when I was starting out, there was just like, I have this stuff, but I don't know where to put it. And this kind of one thing. And when someone's like, hey, brings you over to sit at all of a sudden, like, all the risk of that is off the table. So I would really like help nurture this in whatever way I can, and help get eyes on it, and help the group. That's another thing is awesome with the group, is the group will give their own feedback, always positive, always open-ended, but it's all involved for us to get better.
Well, that's what I'm like. I'm looking for collegial conversation on this kind of thing, and like sharing, and like I've been doing this, like this has been the sort of thing that I'm researching, like you know, when I'm up at 2 in the morning and like waiting for coffee and being like, oh, maybe I'll look into this a little bit. And I don't know, just missing some part of this, the school aspect of the, like this conversational aspect, and it pushes you along in the thinking. But yeah, just being really bogged down, like, well, all these certification programs and school programs, they seem really expensive, and I also feel like I'm getting to the edges of the literature anyway. So
yeah, trust yourself over the letters, man, and we'll do everything we can to help support that.
Cool. So, thanks so much. We'll be in touch. Reach out, and I will too if I've gotten a notion.
Absolutely. I'll be sending you an email.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Thanks so much.
Good talking with you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.